In 1957, on a quiet October night in Monroe, North Carolina, a decorated black veteran stood on his front porch with a rifle as 60 Ku Klux Klan vehicles rolled toward his home with torches and guns. They came to lynch him. They came to burn his house down with his family inside. They'd done it before to countless others, and no one had ever stopped them. But Robert F. Williams did something that night that no black man in the American South had done and survived. He looked into the eyes of the Klan, raised his weapon, and told them if they took one more step, it would be their last. And for the first time in Southern history, the Klan turned around and ran. This is the story of the man America tried to erase because he proved something the government could never accept: that sometimes survival requires more than prayer. To understand Robert F. Williams, you have to understand what it meant to be a black veteran returning home to the South in the 1950s. These men had stormed beaches in Normandy. They had fought fascism in Europe and imperialism in Korea. They had worn the uniform, saluted the flag, and believed the promise that freedom was worth dying for. But when they came home, they found that freedom didn't apply to them. In Monroe, North Carolina, black people couldn't vote without facing violence. They couldn't sit at lunch counters. They couldn't look white people in the eye without risking their lives. And the Ku Klux Klan operated openly, with the blessing of local police, judges, and politicians. Lynchings were still happening, but now they were called accidents or justified homicides. The message was clear: you are not citizens. You are subjects, and if you forget your place, we will remind you with a rope and a tree. Robert F. Williams was born in Monroe in 1925. He served in the Marines during World War II, came home, and worked as a mechanic. He watched his community live in constant terror. He watched mothers warn their sons never to speak to white women, never to walk alone at night, never to show pride or ambition. He watched grown men look at the ground when white teenagers insulted them. And he watched the NAACP, the organization supposed to protect black people, tell them to be patient, to protest peacefully, to wait for the law to change. But patience was getting people killed. In 1955, when Emmett Till was murdered for allegedly whistling at a white woman and his killers were acquitted, something broke inside Williams. He realized that nonviolence only works when your enemy has a conscience. The Klan had none. They had guns, and Williams decided his community needed guns too. In 1956, Robert F. Williams became president of the Monroe chapter of the NAACP. But he wasn't like other NAACP leaders. He didn't just organize sit-ins and petition drives. He recruited veterans, men who had fought in Korea, men who knew how to shoot, how to organize, how to defend a position. He told them something revolutionary: we will march peacefully, but we will not die peacefully. If they attack us, we shoot back. This terrified white Monroe. A black man with military training organizing other black men with guns? It was their worst nightmare. The local police began harassing Williams constantly. The Klan started planning his assassination, and even the NAACP national office grew nervous. This wasn't the respectable, non-threatening protest they wanted. This was something far more dangerous: black people refusing to be victims. Then came 1957, and two cases that would change everything. In the first case, a white man brutally beat a pregnant black woman in broad daylight. He was arrested, brought to trial, and acquitted in less than an hour. The jury didn't even pretend to deliberate. That same week, two black boys, aged 8 and 10, were arrested and faced prison time for the crime of letting a white girl kiss them on the cheek. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Williams stood in front of reporters and said the words that would make him a hero to some and a wanted man to others. He said, "We must meet violence with violence. We must be willing to kill if necessary." America exploded. White newspapers called him a terrorist, a radical, a threat to the peaceful civil rights movement. Black newspapers called him what he was, a man finally telling the truth. The Ku Klux Klan decided Robert F. Williams had to die. On an October night in 1957, they assembled a motorcade, 60 cars, maybe more. Armed men with rifles, shotguns and pistols, torches to light the fires, gasoline to make sure the flames spread fast. They had done this ritual 1,000 times across the South. Roll into the black neighborhood, burn a few homes, shoot anyone who runs, and disappear into the night. The police would call it a tragedy. The newspapers would blame outside agitators, and life would go on. Except this time, something was different. As the Klan convoy approached Williams' neighborhood, they saw black men on rooftops, black men behind cars, black men in windows, and every single one of them was armed. Williams himself stood on his front porch, rifle in hand, surrounded by veterans who had survived actual war and weren't about to be intimidated by cowards in bedsheets. The Klan stopped. Their engines idled. You could feel the tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. The Klan leader, emboldened by a century of unchallenged terror, shouted threats, told Williams he was a dead man, told him to send out his wife and children so they could watch him burn. Williams didn't flinch. He raised his rifle, and his voice carried across the night air, cold and steady. You take one step closer, and this will be the first and last mistake you make. Behind him, a dozen rifles cocked in unison. The sound was unmistakable. It was the sound of men who had decided they would rather die fighting than live on their knees. And in that moment, the Klan realized something they had never confronted before. These black men were not afraid. These black men were ready. And if the Klan attacked, some of them weren't going home. So they left. 60 cars, full of armed Klansmen, turned around and drove away. Not a single shot fired, not a single cross burned, not a single black person harmed. The story spread like wildfire through black communities across the South. Robert F. Williams had done the impossible. He had faced down the Klan and won. Black families who had lived in fear for generations suddenly saw a new possibility: survival. But white America saw something else. They saw a threat, and the system moved quickly to neutralize it. In 1959, the NAACP national leadership suspended Robert F. Williams. They said he was too radical, too violent, that he was damaging the movement. But the truth was simpler. He made white liberals uncomfortable. The civil rights movement was supposed to be about noble suffering, peaceful marches, and black people proving they deserved humanity by enduring brutality without fighting back. Williams disrupted that narrative. He said out loud what many black people had been thinking in private. If someone tries to kill you, kill them first. It wasn't murder, it was survival. But the NAACP chose respectability over reality. And Williams was cast out from the organization he had revitalized. Then, in 1961, the trap was set. During a protest in Monroe, a white couple drove into the black neighborhood and claimed they had been kidnapped. Williams, trying to de-escalate the situation, gave them refuge in his home and then let them leave unharmed. It didn't matter. Police charged him with kidnapping, a capital offense in North Carolina. It was an obvious setup, designed to get Williams into a courtroom where an all-white jury could sentence him to death legally. Williams faced an impossible choice: stay and die in a rigged trial or run. He chose to live. He fled to Cuba. Fidel Castro granted Williams asylum, and from Havana, Williams launched something extraordinary. He started a radio program called Radio Free Dixie, broadcast directly into the American South. Every night, black families in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and North Carolina secretly tuned their radios to hear Williams' voice. He told them they had the right to defend themselves, that they were not slaves, that they were warriors. the FBI tried to jam the signal. Southern police arrested people caught listening. But the message got through, and it inspired a generation. Malcolm X visited Williams in Cuba and called him a hero. A young Huey Newton and Bobby Seale read Williams' book, Negroes with Guns, and used it as the blueprint for the Black Panther Party. The Deacons for Defense and Justice formed in Louisiana, directly inspired by Williams' stand in Monroe. They protected Martin Luther King Jr. on his Southern tours, though King could never publicly thank them. Armed black resistance became a reality, and the Klan's reign of unchallenged terror began to crumble. Williams lived in exile for 8 years, first in Cuba, then in China, during the Cultural Revolution. Meanwhile, the FBI hunted his family and harassed anyone associated with him. The charges were eventually dropped in 1969, and Williams returned to America. But by then, the movement had moved on. Martin Luther King had been assassinated. Malcolm X had been assassinated. The Black Panthers were being destroyed by government infiltration. And Williams, the man who had started it all, faded into obscurity. He died in 1996, largely forgotten by mainstream America. But here's what they don't teach you in school. The civil rights movement didn't succeed just because of peaceful marches and beautiful speeches. It succeeded because white authorities knew that if they pushed too hard, black communities would push back with force. Robert F. Williams proved that armed black resistance was possible, effective, and terrifying to the establishment. The Klan didn't stop terrorizing Monroe because they suddenly grew a conscience. They stopped because they feared getting shot. And when that same model spread to other communities, the dynamics of power shifted. Suddenly, white sheriffs had to think twice before attacking protesters, because those protesters might have armed defenders watching from the shadows. Nonviolence and armed self-defense weren't opposites. They were partners. One provided moral clarity, the other provided survival. History erased Robert F. Williams because his story is dangerous. It proves that sometimes violence in self-defense isn't just justified, it's necessary. It proves that oppressors don't respond to morality. They respond to consequences. It proves that black people have never been passive victims waiting for white saviors. They have always fought back, with lawyers, with boycotts, with sit-ins, and yes, with rifles when their lives depended on it. Williams said it best himself. A man with a gun in his hand is a citizen. A man without one is a subject. The government prefers black heroes who don't fight back, who accept brutality with grace, who die beautifully for a cause. Robert F. Williams refused to be that kind of hero. He chose to live. He chose to fight. He chose to make the Klan run. And they've been trying to make you forget him ever since.